this going. All right, everybody. Again, if you are joining us, welcome. If you could, in the chat window, just let us know where you're from, what you teach. That would be awesome. Like I said, we'll get started here in just a second. Oh, there we go. All right, I got the volume from too many things going. There we go. All right, English teacher from Poland. Awesome. We got Ani and Dialdine joined us. Excellent. All right, well, it is 1 o'clock, so we are going to go ahead and get started. We are live on YouTube as well, so welcome everybody to our webinar today. One of my new favorite webinars are author spotlight webinars, where we just kind of get to sit back and chill a little bit and talk to some amazing teachers and that are using Book Creator in their classrooms and in other situations in this case. And so super excited to have Monica with us today. Just a quick introduction. My name is Jon Smith. I am the Teacher Success Manager here at Book Creator. So many of you I know from lots of our other webinars, and I'm sure Monica recognizes some of these names as well. Let's see, I taught special ed for 12 years, was a tech integration specialist for 7, and now as a Teacher Success Manager, lots of webinars, lots of trainings, sales, support, pretty much anything that we can do, I get to do. And really excited. Married, I've got 3 kids, 10, 7, and 3. Like I said, who are downstairs playing right now, and I'm hoping that that's where they stay for like the next 35 minutes or so. And let's see what else. Love golf, and I love clean cars. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So Monica, if you could, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll kind of go from there.
All right. Well, I am just very excited to be here with you all for this kind of different session. Jon and I are used to getting on for webinars together. So excited to chat and have this time together. I am a former New York City public school teacher. So I'm still based here on the East Coast, but I've been out of the classroom for a couple years, running professional development for schools and organizations, writing and sharing about education technology topics on my blog, classtechtips.com, and my podcast, the Easy Ed Tech podcast. And I've also done some work with a team here at Book Creator. So I am a Book Creator author and Book Creator ambassador, and I have a few different books with lesson ideas and activities that I've created alongside with the team here. So really excited for today to chat, answer questions, and take you through some of those resources as well.
All right, awesome. Yes, I'm excited to talk about some of that stuff today too. Monica, tell us one interesting fact about you that maybe people don't know.
So one of my, I would say one of my fun facts is that I have my Girl Scout Gold Award, which is kind of like an Eagle Scout for Boy Scouts, if you are more familiar with the Boy Scout version of it. So yeah, that's one of my go-to fun facts.
Oh, awesome. That's very cool. Excellent. And then Monica, how long were you in the classroom?
Yeah, so I taught 5th grade for 6.5 years. So in a 5th grade classroom, some of those years were with an overhead projector. Some of those years are with iPads. Some of those years were same group of students all day long, a different content area, different subjects. And a couple of those years were split groups where I focused in on ELA and social studies.
Awesome. You mentioned overhead projectors. I have to laugh. I teach a graduate class, and sometimes the graduate classes are in hotels in different parts of Ohio. Sometimes they're at local colleges. And every time I step into a local college, without fail, in that classroom, there is a projector. And I had to laugh because the one time I thought I'd be like extra snarky. And so as I'm in there getting set up for class, I set the projector up. And I had nothing to use with it. I didn't have like a vis-a-vis marker. I didn't have any paper or any of the transparencies and none of that. So I found a dry erase marker and I wrote right on top of it anyway, because I was like, I don't even care. I'm just going to do this. So I wrote my name and all my information and I put it up on the wall, and people are coming into this class expecting a graduate level technology class. And here I am with a projector or a overhead putting my information up on the wall. And I thought, you should have seen their faces that are coming in. They're like, you gotta be kidding me. But yeah, so it was just a big joke. But so Monica, one of my favorite things to do for me is to share my story of Book Creator and explain to people, how I came about using Book Creator and what it has meant to my students and to me and to people that I share Book Creator with. But we're not going to do that because I think most people have heard my story and they're probably tired of hearing my story. So I want to hear your story. Think back, to when you first heard about Book Creator. What were you doing? Like, how did you come across Book Creator? Did you love it immediately? Did you have to be, coerced into liking it from somebody else? Or, what is it? So just tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, so I came from an iPad environment. So as a classroom teacher, we were one-to-one with iPad. So I was always very iPad focused when I was looking for resources in terms of compatibility, right? So wanting to make sure things would work on those devices. And now we're talking about 10 years ago almost, right? So early on. And Book Creator was really one of the first iPad apps that came on the scene in education, just in terms of things you could jump into, you could use right away. And as an Apple Distinguished Educator, there was so much buzz in the iPad friendly education community around Book Creator because it was something that was so dynamic and worked really well as an iOS app. As soon as Book Creator became Chrome and web browser friendly, that took my, love for Book Creator to the next level because I, having been out of the classroom for about 5 years or so now, host a lot of professional development. I work with teachers in all different parts of the country, sometimes internationally. And in the past, face to face, I would walk into a room ready to work with a group, sometimes K-12 teachers, sometimes from different parts of the region or district, usually with all different devices. So I was always looking for things that were device agnostic or device neutral so that no matter what anyone had, they could have a really successful day with me and make something that went back, would go back to their work with their students or with their colleagues. And so that for me is really what solidified my first just interest and, that curiosity that was piqued around it into something that I was really committed to exploring more deeply. I'm always looking for what I call open-ended creation tools. So things you can use in lots of different ways. And if anyone on the line has joined a webinar with me and definitely with Jon, right, you've seen all the different ways you can use this. So now with distance learning front of mind, it's even more so the case where virtually I'll jump in with a group of a few dozen educators. We'll be in a shared library, similar to what we've done together here. And it's a great way to illustrate the power of technology in general. And then everyone gets to leave with a tool in their tool belt that really shines.
Yeah, and what you said makes so much sense. Even in my graduate classes, I look at the progression of where the technology has come in, like you said, 8 to 10 years or whatever. And I remember when I first started teaching that technology class, like even class iPads wasn't like a huge thing back then. I mean, I was still talking about like using an iPod Touch to do like sight words or something, right? And so when I started getting into the iPad myself, I started, using Book Creator and sharing that out. But not a lot of people had the iPads, and if they could, there were only a couple of them. And then you started seeing that shift, right, where now Chromebooks start coming into the mix. And for a while, people would ask me questions like, "Well, book that looks great on the iPad. What's an equivalent on Chrome?" And for a lot of times, it was like, I don't have a good answer. I can't answer that question. If I find one, I'll give you an alternative. But again, for a long time that wasn't possible. And so now that Book Creator is on Chrome, yeah, it really has kind of helped close that gap, I guess, where creation on Chrome and things like that has really become a lot more powerful. So yeah, I love that feature. Love Book Creator on Chrome. I think it's great, and being able to share with teachers and kids, again, especially during remote learning, makes it just so much more sensible, I guess, as we're talking.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely something where, working with groups like you mentioned that might be using different devices or that are very much in a Chrome environment, it's just been so magical to see how easy it is for someone on a web browser to use Book Creator. And then, when I'm working with folks that do have iPads, I'm encouraging them, right, to get into the web browser version of Book Creator with all the benefits that are there. So it's funny to think about all the different use cases that I've been looking at with this really powerful tool for, the past, few years.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that brings us to kind of today, and one of the things that we do during this, author spotlight is highlight some of the amazing stuff that these authors are making. And so, you have a bunch of books that you have written for us. I think your newest one is the journal book
Mhm.
for book creators. So, Monica, what I'm going to have you do is, if you want, I'm gonna let you share your screen here.
You bet.
Let me make you the host, and then you can share some of the really cool things that you are doing with book creator, and some of the cool books that you've made, and then we'll kind of talk about those as we're going through what you're going to share with us today.
That sounds great. And as you were chatting and sharing a bit about your story, I was pulling up on my screen this my Chrome browser here. So let me go ahead and pull it up for us. So my website, and I'll put some links in the chat too as we're talking, because I'm sure that folks who are with us, may want to click on some things and turn pages on their own. At least that's how I am when I'm doing something interactive like this, right? So on my website, classtechtips.com, I have a blog post for each of the books that I've created. For the folks at Book Creator, giving them, just a little bit of a rundown and sharing it with my audience. So you can see here, I put in the Book Creator tag. So all my posts that are tagged as Book Creator friendly. And this very first one is all about how to create interactive journals with students. And you saw Jon put the link to this resource or this blog post right within here. So in the blog post, I go through, and I'm going to take you out to the ebook in just a second, some of the highlights here. And the goal, what really kind of inspired this in our behind the scenes conversations around using Book Creator, was how journals are such a wonderful way to get kids to reflect and share. And I often, when talking about Book Creator and journals, give the example to the educators I'm on a call with about, the marble composition notebooks and how I used to collect them from students right before we went to lunch or we switched to the next class or whatever it might be, right? So here you get, a lot of the same wonderful things that would happen in those traditional analog spaces. You get that happening with a lot of value add. So kids with more choice on how they share, you being able to better organize and see everyone's work in real time. And so this link here, and I'll place it into the chat here, takes you out to the Book Creator blog post that goes through some of the same things I cover in mine. And then as you click here to the read this book online, it'll take you out to the live library page. So I'm going to put just a little regular text placeholder, and then we've got our next link. So here you can see that the beautiful cover, the design. I say that not to give myself any credit, because the team at Book Creator just does an like, if you could see my face, and Jon, I'm sure you could imagine too, like when Dan first shows me these, or like if we're on a call and he says, you want to take a look at this, this is where we're at so far. I always have that, like, you've got to be kidding me. Oh my goodness, sort
Deer
of
in the headlights kind of moment, right? You're just like,
thing.
what am I looking at?
Right.
I have to, and I'll take kind of like a little side note here, because as we're looking at this cover, it made me think about two things, and one of them is what you just mentioned. So I'm going to come back. I'm going to circle back to that one in a second. But the first thing that really it really kind of gained my attention is the title, right? So just, and it sounds kind of silly, but like right underneath, activity ideas for every classroom. And I think sometimes, I know I did as a teacher, when I'm thinking writing, like it was
Mhm.
something else. It was its own subject. It happened on Tuesdays at 1 o'clock, or like whatever. And I think same thing happens when people think of book creator. They think of books, and they kind of lock their brains into a certain mentality. Well, I teach math. I can't possibly make books because I teach math, or I'm a science teacher. I'm not an English teacher. But there's so many ways that you can do writing and journals across the subject area in every single classroom, which I think is really, really powerful. Um, and then the second piece was in terms of the design, right? Monica is 100% correct on this. And I think what is awesome about what we're about to see, and kind of what I'm going to explain here, is that book creator is super easy. And sometimes that ease of use kind of deters people because they're like, well, I teach older kids, or I teach adults, or I teach, high school, and it's too easy, right? And so my favorite comeback to that is always, then make it look not easy. Like, shock me, show me things in Book Creator that make me go, what did you just do? And this book, among many of the other ones, that we have helped work with authors and help do our illustrations and do different things. I'm with you, because I remember that the one that really set me off was the emoji book.
Yeah.
The first time I saw the emoji book, I remember sending a message to Dan saying, this book is amazing, but we cannot put this on our website. And he's like, why? And I said, because there's no way that we made this in Book Creator. Like, I was like, how did you do this? And so I actually sat down with our designer and said, Gavin, you got to show me how you did this piece, because I don't understand. And when I watched him make some of these pages like right in front of my face, I was shocked. And so now, again, it's just one of those things, like, I always come back to people, make me shocked, show me something I didn't think was possible. So I can't wait until we turn the pages here, Monica, and take a look at some of this stuff.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, and I appreciate you sharing that too, John, just to give some of that context of, right, this is super doable, even if it might not be, something. I always think of that phrase, like, you don't know what you don't know. So I love how you are encouraging that behind the scenes look from the team. So let me go ahead here. And if you have the link, you are welcome to just go along with me, right? Or you got the screen share. So you can see here, there's the table of contents with all the different activities lined out. There's my little about me page. You're listening to me talk today, so you don't need to necessarily hear me there with the recording, but the transcript is built in here, which of course you can use in your own creations or encourage students to do. If there's so many reasons why you would encourage students to do this, first and foremost, from an accessibility, to make it accessible for their reader, whoever their audience might be, whether they need that or you're not sure if they need it. But even for your own benefit, if kids record their voice and they click that transcript button, and you are in a place where you're doing a scan, you might not be able to listen to the full piece, but you can go through the transcript and give quicker feedback. Like, there's value add to that too.
You know what, Monica, I just thought of something totally separate. I was thinking about my own daughter when you were talking about the transcript piece. So as a teacher, like, I love the audio record button. I think that it's just fantastic, because now I can hear the kid's voice, I can see things. But I love, from an almost from an assessment point of view, if you add that transcript and you click the audio button, you have both. You can hear the student, but then you can also see where the mistakes were being made. And so with my own daughter, she would say something and speech to text or the transcript wouldn't pick it up. And she's like, well, I didn't say pizza. I said, poinsettias or something, right? And I was like, well, then you have to learn to be a little more clear about what you say, and I always joke, Siri, for whatever reason, thinks I have a mouthful of marshmallows when I talk. But Book Creator doesn't, right? So I love it from an assessment point of view, because now as a student, I have to speak clearly, or that transcript piece may not come out the way I want it to be. And so I think that's an important thought that kind of popped in there.
Yeah, and I think it's so useful to think through, like, sometimes the obvious reasons for something are not the best reasons for that individual. So that ability, and I joke often, I grew up on Long Island, so I've got my aggressive vowels. I lived in New York City for a decade. I went to school in Delaware, so I've got my O's that I say a little funny, right? So, you really have to think through as you're kind of going through to make sure you're being clear and ready for everyone. And it's also a good just editing exercise too. Like, if you've ever worked with students of any age, but especially elementary, if you have them read their work aloud to you, I know I've had kids like almost grab the paper back for me, because as soon as they start reading it, they realize, like, oh, that sentence sounds funny, and they want to go and make a change, right? So just so many great reasons here.
Yeah.
So you can see here, like, most of the books, and true of the books that I've done, at least for the team, there's an introduction. There's just some general best practices or considerations when talking about journaling, and then it goes into some activities. And so the first one here is the back to school journals. This is a great for any time of year where you might have a pause. So if you're with us here in the States and you're about to have a 2 week or so break, you might do this at the beginning of the year. If you're in Australia and your school year has ended and you're going to start up in January, this would count for you too. And for this journal book, I included some prompts that you might want to use as well. There's also a little audio with some extra tips, and then a link to an additional resource you might want to explore. So journals, I always think of prompts, right? Setting up kids for success. What are you going to ask them to do? And sometimes a sentence starter or a prompt is a little bit more focusing than saying, just write about your day, like, or just giving a blank space that might feel more intimidating. So you can see here, this one is a science experiment journal. So this is where you might look and say, how do we write in a science classroom, or what are some things that you might want to do? There's actually a link down here to another book. Let me see here if so for another book, you can see right there that I created for the Team Up Book Creator on science projects. And then one on community interview journals, which is, like all of these, very scalable. Your first graders interviewing someone in the community might feel different than your 10th graders doing it. So there's no like specific standards correlation here, because it's really up to you to say, like, what are my expectations? What is it that I'm looking for my speaking and listening ELA standards, my civic engagement standards, right? Whatever it might be that you're looking at.
Monica, I love the community journals in interviewing people. I think it's really cool, and I think back to like some of my grandparents, and the stories that we have from them are stories that are in my head, and we don't really have them anywhere else, And I think that. We did a book one time, and we actually had a Holocaust survivor come in and talk to our high school. And at the end, he said something that was really profound. He basically said, I want my story to be something more than a footnote in a history book. And it was really a powerful statement. And it makes me think, when we're looking at something like community interview journals, everybody's got a story. And if we don't do something with those stories, then eventually those stories are going to go away. And I think with Book Creator, not only can we have a text and a summary of what we learned from that interview, we can literally record the entire interview and stick it right there in the book. And now that story is live and it's there forever. And it just keeps things going. And I think that's really cool.
And what a great point too, John, about just the variety of multimedia, right? So it might be a video recording that you pull in as part of this. It might be an audio recording. It might be a summary. So there's just so many ways to personalize and or I should say, really customize this experience for different groups of students.
Yeah.
So let's keep going here. You can see this one is more seasonal. So some summertime journals of things that students might have done, right? Their top moments of the week. I love the emoji connection. If you have not used emojis in Book Creator, you are missing out. You want to make sure to check those out. And you can see that here, right? Where you might have students use one emoji for each day of the week to chronicle something they did over the summertime. You might take a spin on this, make it your own, make it a wintertime journal. And maybe that includes something that kids did over an extended break, and they come back and they kind of write and share about that as well.
Yeah.
Next is a healthy eating journal. This is something that you might do as part of a nutrition unit of study or goal setting that kids might have around a science topic that's coming up. You could take a spin on this and have kids journal some of their favorite recipes, or pick one a month and then have a year-long healthy eating journal of their 12 favorite recipes or 10 favorite recipes from the year. And you can see here there's some prompts as well, like, where do you learn about fruits and vegetables? What would you make for a friend? Right, that's especially tasty.
I think I had a phys ed teacher reach out to me about a month or so ago, and this would have been something he told me this was something he would not have thought about. He does every year a goal setting activity with the students where they document eating habits and exercise and all that kind of stuff. And it was always just paper pencil in the past. And then I did a webinar with this school district, and his brain, started thinking about this. So we sat down and we chatted for almost an hour one day about ways that we could use Book Creator to accomplish what he had done in the past, but make it a little bit different. And so instead of just a healthy eating journal, it came out to be, goal. What are my goals? Here's a videotape of me doing the exercise the right way. Here's a photo of what I ate for lunch. And then they took like little arrows and they're pointing down. And it's like, okay, I probably could have saved that Twinkie, for a different day, right? Or not eaten it at all and replace that with carrots and peanut butter or something. You know what I mean? Like, so it was really cool to see. And again, you can just use Book Creator for everything.
Yeah, and that's really the big thing here. And I'm so glad you gave those extra examples, because I don't want this to feel like it's a food log, right? Or like, what did you eat all day, every day? It's not that. It's about a place to maybe celebrate something, right? So what surprised you about a new fruit you tried this week? Or like, what's something that you saw on a trip to the supermarket you hadn't seen before, right? I would like to think I've traveled a bunch and have seen lots of things, but I go to the supermarket all the time and I'm just like, what is that? Right? Like, especially in the produce section, like, is that just a different kind of pear? Like, is this a different fruit I don't know about? Right? So, you might have things like that, even, side by side with a community excursion, right? That goes along with it too.
No, and my brain just never stops. And now we have a store opening up soon, and it was open for a while, and then for whatever reason went bankrupt. But now, like, somebody bought it back, and it's like, no, we're bringing this back, and it's like one of our favorite grocery stores. And so now I'm thinking like, oh man, next time we go in there this Saturday when they reopen,
Yeah.
like I'm gonna take pictures of foods with my kids and be like, find one thing in here that's so fascinating to you that you want to try it. Like, let's do this. So now I'm getting excited about Saturday even more now than just the pizza that they have. So yeah, awesome.
I know, right? So many directions. And I think that's really the huge takeaway, especially with journals, right? Like, it's all about your focus and your guidance that you're giving kids, but they've got plenty of room to make these spaces their own. And, we've talked before about SEL activities. I believe we did a webinar together, right, about SEL activities. And there's a book, as you can see down at the bottom, linked at the bottom of the screen, on projects that support social emotional learning. So you might have students do a feelings journal, right? You could still give prompts. You might say, choose 2 emojis that represent how you felt today. You can get really flexible with something like this too. Next up are reading journals, right? Love writing about reading and talking about reading. And it could be like why this character frustrates me or why I didn't like the ending of the book, So you can get a whole range of that, right? Beyond just a reading log, right? That might start the conversation of what you read today, but then you might go into what you want to know more about. And I think sometimes journals and reading journals feel like they're responses to novels or picture books, but it does not have to be a literature or fiction, right? This could include more of a current events focus, or what I read on Newsella or Smithsonian Tween Tribune. So you could go into a lot of different directions, really across genres. And if you're having, any students that you work with who might love to read, but the moment you say, let's open up our journals, they're just like, get me back in this story, right? I do not want to write about this. I'm in the middle of chapter 7 and I want to see what happens to Harry and Hermione, right? Like, you're going to want to be able to like give them some choice and some creativity. And so this might be a way that just changes the way they think about, responding to something that they've read.
Wow. Yeah, like I'm just thinking, like when I was in school,
Right.
there wasn't really like this whole reading for pleasure kind of mentality, and so it never really stuck, right, for me. Like this whole like reading for enjoyment, because it was not like this. It was more, you read this and now you answer these 12 questions that I'm giving you, not what are you getting out of it. And it's just, looking at something like this would have made a lot more sense to me.
Yeah, and I think we can all be really reflective about those experiences. I was someone who, grew up in a family of readers, right? And, I love a good storybook, but even now, I don't read a lot of novels. I read a crazy amount, but I don't read a lot of novels. I read a lot of nonfiction, a lot of memoirs for my own, passion reading. But then I think back to being a child, or, that sort of 10 to 15 years of my reading experiences. And I was reading magazines front cover to back cover, like voraciously at the library, right? Like, so, so much of that reading was different than, say, a novel or a series, but it counts, right? It counts when we think about what we want kids to accomplish in different reading experiences.
Absolutely.
So let's keep going here. We've got a few more. I love a brainstorming journal and giving kids some time to free write and share. This could be connected to a writing project. So if you've ever done a writer's notebook with students, you might kind of loop this in together. Or it might be something that you want kids to kind of be more reflective of, like maybe they are brainstorming things they want to research or they want stories they want to tell. And you can see a link down here to another book, another resource around writing workshops. That might be something to include as well. So glad, Sarah, you've got 5 new ideas for using Book Creator. I just saw that in the chat. So
awesome. Good
as
luck with class.
Yeah, right. I know it's still a school day here. So let me go here. Inquiry journals, they're kind of like a little bit of a cousin to a brainstorming journal, right? So an inquiry journal might be where you have kids writing about things they want to learn more about or questions that they have. So you might even set up a routine that when kids, have those burning questions, instead of going straight to Google to find out where sea turtles live, they write down their questions first. And then they go to the Google machine and they start, looking for answers. So some of this really comes back down to routines, structures, the space you might give for students to pause and record. So much here that they could do. And even if you have students do an inquiry journal and they might jot something down on a sticky note, well, what's great about Book Creator is the camera's built in, so they can like hold it up to the webcam or snap a picture, right, depending on their device. So an inquiry journal or a brainstorming journal might not just be digital, but digital might be like the home or the hub, and they might have some kind of offline things like an illustration or a drawing and pull that into the equation as well. Next up is a goal setting journal. I'm all about the goal setting, especially this time of year, right? Like, where do we want to be in 2 months from now? Where do we want to be at the end of 2021? And this may be something that students are setting some goals. They're really chronicling the steps of their goals, or maybe they just have one big goal and once a week, they get in and they talk about their progress. So this is something that, again, super customizable. And for all of these, I would really model for kids what your journals look like so that they can see what, a strong example could look like as well. Then as we move through kind of a spin on journaling, a digital portfolio, right, which takes student work from different parts of the year or different parts of a unit and pulls it all together. Digital portfolios, I always think of them as living and breathing things because they're not like a one and done, but you're revisiting them on a cycle. And so what's great here is that kids can add reflections. They can add links to things they might have made in another tool. Did they have this like huge aha moment that they put on Flipgrid? Well, they can link to it into their digital portfolio and talk about how that changed the direction of their research project. And of course, and you see some examples on the side of the page, kids can snap pictures. So it becomes a spot where all of these things live, no matter where they started. So you might have kids use that audio button to record their voice as a reflection, and that becomes part of it as well.
I love that page right there where the student work, they took pictures of it and put it on a page. I think a lot of times, and I have to admit, like I was this way too. When I first just started getting into technology, it was like tech for everything, tech this, tech that, tech, here, tech everywhere. And I think sometimes with students and especially with teachers, I think they fear sometimes that when they use technology or they learn a new technology tool, that some of the things that they're comfortable with or that they've been used to are going to get thrown away. And it's just not true. This is the perfect example. I'm not telling my son or a kid in my class that they have to stop using crayons and markers, or that they have to, stop using clay or whatever. You can take a picture of it and add it to your book, but then it's there again forever, sort of like those stories that we have. In the community interviews, we don't want those stories to go away. We don't want the pottery to go away. We don't want your artwork to go away. So we can keep track of it and keep it inside of something like Book Creator to again, just keep it forever, which is fantastic.
Absolutely. And, as you were talking about that, and we were talking about, these different ways that kids might interact with content, there's all this opportunity for choice, right? So you can have kids kind of choose how they might interact with something, what they might feel more comfortable with. I've read plenty of ebooks, but I am much more a hold a book in your hand type of person. But that being said, like I love audiobooks, and not to date myself, but like I never call them audible or audiobooks very often. I usually call them books on tape because that's how I feel about them, even though I don't have a big box of tapes like that used to be from the library, in the past. But, so we all have these like ways that we as adult learners navigate through digital spaces, and kids are the same way, and we don't want to make an assumption that they just love all the iPad stuff, right? Like there might be moments that they really want to pull in things from different spots. So digital portfolios are super fun. And so there are some teacher spotlights in this book. So you can click out and it'll open up in a new window for you some blog posts. This one is all about yearbooks, which kind of fall into our journaling and portfolio category. This one includes a link where if you click the link, it'll copy it, template to your library. So you've got that as an option too. So as you go through here, you can see lots of awesome stories that relate to this content as well. So much, just here for hopefully you to get your wheels spinning. There's no kind of one way, right, to use journals. And as you saw on kind of my big list here, there's a couple other resources around digital citizenship that I've created for them, that emoji book Jon mentioned. So lots of different things. I've got some other book creator content here too, but you've got the social studies book that I've made for them. So lots of ways that you can use Book Creator, and it's such a go-to tool for me for lots of different reasons.
Yeah, that's amazing stuff, Monica. We really appreciate it. And for those of you that are excited about what you're hearing today and do want to see more, don't forget to go to YouTube and look up our Book Creator channel because we have a lot of Monica's webinars that we've recorded and kept there. So definitely want to go and check those out. All right, Monica, I'm going to put you on the spot here as we are wrapping up our time. Top 3 favorite parts of Book Creator, your favorite tools within Book Creator, and then how, like one quick idea for each one on how you might use it in a classroom. So I'll give you an example and then we'll let you go ahead. So my top tool, this isn't probably my top tool, but I'm going to use it as an example because I don't want to, my top tool is something different, but let's just say shapes, for example. All right. So when people think of shapes, people think of like, oh, I can make a house or I can make a car with shapes. And that's kind of where they leave it. But I like using shapes to do feedback for student work because we don't have a commenting feature in Book Creator. But I can take the shape, I can put some text inside of it, just kind of drag it off to the side, and I can leave comments inside that box for student work. So now they can have their writing on the page, they see my comments, and then they can go through and make adjustments. So that would be one example. So Monica, let's have it. Your top 3 favorite parts of Book Creator.
Well, I'll give you shapes and I'll pull that off my list so I can do 3 more. I love shapes for organizing information, right? So many ways you can do it. I would say it'd be hard for me not to put the audio recording at the top of the list. I find that to be such a wonderful way to level the playing field for students. And if you are using the audio to give feedback, it lets kids really hear your voice, your energy, your enthusiasm. So love it for that reason. I also have to say that I would put voice to text high on my list because it works. Sometimes that doesn't work and it works. It's very reliable. And I think it also can help kids build some confidence as a writer, right? To have that and to know that that's there and available for them. So
Absolutely. Sorry, just real quick I love voice to text too. And for my students, we always called that writing with your face. because they just, if I'm going from here to my fingertips to a pencil or to a keyboard, sometimes there's like a giant gap, and it just never makes it. Whatever I'm thinking doesn't make it into a keystroke or a pencil or something like that. But kids will talk. And so if they hit that speech to text, they can just yak away and it will record everything that's to say. And then you go back and edit it and do whatever you need to do to it later, but at least you get it out.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think there's just so much there, right? When you can think about with kids sharing in different ways. And then it's hard to pick a third one. I mean, I love the emojis, obviously, and that was such like a winning thing that happened. I love the auto draw, but maybe one that I'll give some love to is the panels within the comic book creation. I say that because I when you see comics, sometimes you think, oh, we're not doing comics today. And it's easy to just put it in its own category. But I love the comic panels, which are basically just our boxes, right? That are in different organized in different ways, because it lends itself well to first, then, next, finally, 1, 2, 3, like anything with sequence, anything with dividing things up into categories. So I like the panels because you can just get really creative with them.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that too, because as you were going through your journal book, I'm sitting there watching, I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, that's a panel, like, and it doesn't look like it. Like people may not look at it, and be like, well, how did you get the images lined up properly, or how did you get it to do that? And I'm sitting, and I know that it's a panel, and there's a lot of really cool tips and tricks and hacks that you can use with panels. So if you're curious about some of those, I encourage you to watch one of our The Book Creator You Never Knew webinars, where we do talk about different hacks and using different bits and pieces of Book Creator in different ways. So I encourage you to check that out. Well, Monica, I just want to say, first of all, thank you. I do have one last question, and then one other kind of, I guess, two more questions. One, what's next? What's the next book that you've got rolling around in your brain there?
Great question. We don't have anything in the works right now with this particularly, but I feel like one thing I've been talking a lot about around this idea of creativity and collaboration is what it looks like for kids to work together within Book Creator, just some best practices for that. It's been something that I don't talk about all the time when I do webinars or events. And but it's come up a lot more recently. So I know it's front of mind for people, which is always how I'm trying to think too. Like, what if like forget about what I'm excited about sometimes, right? What is everyone else really pumped up about? And that's definitely one thing.
Awesome. And then one more question, and this is the same question I give every single person that we do one of these author spotlights for. And Monica, you've talked with lots of teachers, and you've gone to lots of conferences, and you do lots of speaking. What is the one thing that you see in classrooms right now that just needs to go away? Like, just needs to die. Let's get rid of this from schools. What is that?
Well, I think one thing that, is tough is sometimes just the one size fits all approach, right? And sometimes it just is what it is because people aren't given enough time for planning, right? They aren't given the support that they need. So I by no means mean that in a demonizing sort of way. It's more just a reminder for anyone who is really allocating time to say, like, what can we do to make sure that we really are giving every educator the space to think and brainstorm and be strategic around helping kids have some choice and different ways to use anything, right? To show what they know in different ways. And so that's something that I hope that kind of dismissiveness of like everything is fine, everything can happen the same way all the time, right? I hope that that's something that we're able to move past a little bit to just give kids, more voice and choice there, give teachers time to plan that strategically. It definitely happens in lots of places. And I just hope that it's something that becomes more widespread.
Yeah, I think back to my tech integration days, and I never would have had pandemic on the bingo card of things that move teachers in a different direction. And I think what's fascinating is, I'm doing tons and tons of webinars like you with schools and things like that, and what I love hearing, obviously this is bad stuff, right? There's nobody wanted this to happen, and it's horrible, but the good that came out of this is almost every single school that reaches out to me and says, can you do a webinar? We have dedicated time on Wednesdays for teachers to get together and plan. We now have dedicated PD days. And so like, because of something bad, we now have started to see the value in saying to teachers, no, look, we're going to give you Wednesday. That's your day to plan things now. And so I'm hoping and I'm wondering how much of this, when things get back to quote normal, how much of this will translate over to that, so that we can say, no, you know what, this worked really well and we're going to let you keep it. Now that we're back to 5 days or in person or whatever the case may be. Yeah. Well, Monica, thank you so much for sharing those links and resources in the chat window. Do you have any shout outs you want to give before we sign off?
Well, just a big thank you for everyone who tuned in. If you're watching the replay of this and you want some links to things, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always happy to share things and talk shop. Probably the quickest way is on Instagram or Twitter. So if you follow along at Class Tech Tips, I share lots and lots of favorites. I was in my Instagram stories earlier today telling people I would be here with you, Jon, right, for this webinar. So that's probably the best place. But yeah, thank you everyone just for your time and dedication and carving out, this afternoon to dive into these resources.
Awesome. Well, again, Monica, thank you. It's always a pleasure getting together and talking about Book Creator and just education and things in general. So thank you so much for being here. I'll stick around for a couple minutes, see if there's any extra questions. But other than that, thanks everybody for being here. Really appreciate it. Be safe out there. Happy bookmaking. And don't forget to check out all those resources. So thank you, Monica. Thanks everybody that was watching on YouTube. We're going to go ahead and end. Oh, Monica, if you could make me the host again. Oh, yep. Thank you. Just did it. Thank you. We're going to go ahead and we'll stop the